Urban legends, hoaxes, rumors, a mainstay on this channel at this point. It's no secret that I love to discuss myths in basically any way, shape, or form. From Grand Theft Auto rumors to all-around video game hoaxes and even fake lost media. I've dedicated quite a few Iceberg videos to looking into these very topics, and today we're going to do something similar. Instead, this time though, we'll be looking at just urban legends and myths from TV. Kind of similar to the video we did on cartoon conspiracy theories, but with all kinds of TV shows, live actions, cartoons, everything. However, this Iceberg is also pretty unique in that it includes not only just urban legends that are just that, mere myths, but also some rumored pieces of TV media that turned out to be very real. So sit back and relax, grab a snack as we dive into the world of TV urban legends and myths. But real quick, before we get into the Iceberg, I'd like to shout out the sponsor of today's video, Raycon. At this point, you already know, Raycon has taken the industry by storm and made a name for themselves for their premium audio and tech products, like the everyday earbuds, the perfect gift for this holiday season, and the best inexpensive earbuds you can get. Perfect for listening to music, going on walks, working out at the gym, or just chilling and listening to YouTube videos like this. But for me, they definitely live up to their everyday name, because I'm almost always working on scripts, doing audio for videos, or just editing in general, which makes having a reliable pair of earbuds essential to my work and everyday routine. They also have great sound quality and a sleek design coming in a variety of colors. I went with the black ones, and in hand they definitely have a very premium feel and look to go along with a crisp sound and a more affordable price than most Bluetooth earbuds out there. So if you're looking for generally great and inexpensive earbuds or other premium tech products and are also looking to support the channel, then get an early start on holiday sales by shopping Raycon's early Black Friday sale today. Go to buyraycon.com/sourcebrew to get 20 to 50% off site-wide. Again, that's buyraycon.com/sourcebrew. Thank you again to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Now back to the Iceberg. A stranger is a friend you haven't met yet. This one here is a rumor stemming from Barney and Friends, as it's one of the most widely misquoted lines from any TV show, at least when it comes to kids shows. But this instance is unique in that there isn't even a variation of it. This is just never said in the show, but is still misattributed to Barney to this day because of its strange message, which could be considered dangerous advice, as, well, kids should probably not just trust random strangers that they meet. Still, we're unsure where this rumor really got started or where it even came from, because there's no evidence of Barney or any other character ever saying this line or endorsing this message in the show. In fact, funnily enough, he says the exact opposite in a song called The Stranger Song, saying things like, "Never talk to strangers, that's very good advice." A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie. Here we go again. I'm sure you've heard about this a million times, so I'll be sure to keep it brief. This is a fake piece of lost media, one of the most prominent, in fact, that's been making its rounds in the community for years. It was said to be an unproduced mockumentary film about SpongeBob who spends a day with a kid named Seth who wins a contest. However, there is no movie that was actually ever made, and it remains one of the most widespread lost media hoaxes ever, with quite a storied history, which can be found in a few videos on YouTube dedicated to the subject. There are a few pages of an alleged undeveloped script, as well as this DVD cover art, but that's really all there is. Bert and Ernie are gay. One of the most iconic duos from Sesame Street is Bert and Ernie, and over the years there has been quite a bit of discussion on whether these two characters are gay or a couple, with conflicting answers and conclusions. The company known for producing the show, Sesame Workshop, has clarified in a statement that they are puppets and have no sexual orientation, saying instead that they are just best friends. However, in 2018, it was also stated by one of the scriptwriters for Sesame Street that some of Bert and Ernie's relationship dynamics were based on his own experiences and relationship with his partner, Arnold Glassman. Cal Arts style. So this topic is a little bit complicated, but on the Iceberg it links back to a Reddit post talking about how the CalArt style of animation is taking over the world, or rather debunking that claim, which also links to a video by Channel Frederator. Basically, the CalArt style is a style of modern animation that is described as simplistic and typically features similar in basic character designs in each project, and is used to describe shows like Gravity Falls, Steven Universe, the new Thundercats show, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and many more. It's named after the California Institute of Arts, as many alumni from this school have their names attached to projects featuring this kind of art style, which many people have begun to criticize for being samey and boring. However, it should be noted that this style of animation is less to do with this school and more so to do with the times, as in modern animation there are typically seen certain eras where art styles remain fairly similar across various different projects, and it's been this way since cartoons became mainstream, at least here in America. So whether you love or hate the style, it's not like it's taking over the medium in its entirety in some kind of grand conspiracy. It's just kind of the popular thing to do right now, and there are cartoons that don't look like this, but I can see why many are getting sick of it. Candle Cove. Candle Cove is one of the most famous creepypastas from back in the day, and one of the most nostalgic for me personally. That being said, no, it's not real. It's a story written by a cartoonist and content creator named Chris Straub, who would go on to make the analog horror series Local 58, as well as many other horror-related projects. And Candle Cove itself would end up being adapted in the first season of an anthology series on Sci-Fi called Channel Zero. But Candle Cove itself is described as a children's program which aired on a TV station called Local 58. Yes, the same one from the analog horror series, where there are various puppet characters that go on adventures on a ship called the Laughingstock. However, as the show went on, it began to get more and more disturbing, until the last episode is basically just the entire cast of characters screaming. However, for some reason, only children remember the show, and when their parents looked at the screen to see what their kids were watching, they were only met with static. Yeah, it's kind of a basic creepypasta by today's standards, but for back then it was pretty creepy, especially with some of the fan-made videos that went along with the story, with some even questioning back then if it was real or not. Cursed Kleenex commercial. Here we have a rather infamous Japanese Kleenex commercial that was considered so creepy that it was possibly cursed, leading it to be taken off the air. This only further fueled rumors and speculation though on this strange commercial. Yeah, so it's definitely creepy and weird, but cursed? Well, rumors spread that many people involved in the filming of this commercial turned up dead, possibly due to some curse. Furthermore, it was said that if you watched the video at exactly midnight, the video would change into something even more disturbing. But the commercial, as far as we know, didn't curse anyone or cause the death of any actors or crew members, and was aired in 1986 in Japan, while the more modern urban legends were likely started when the video was re-uploaded to sites like YouTube, where it could be viewed all over the world. Dan Schneider allegations. It's definitely no secret now, but for a while, the very strange and frankly gross misconduct by Nickelodeon show producer Dan Schneider was unknown to the public. Known for making some of their most classic shows like iCarly, Drake and Josh, Victorious, and others, Schneider has been working with Nickelodeon since the 90s. However, in 2018, his partnership with the company was suddenly dropped, which came alongside some very disturbing allegations of sexual misconduct against staff and child actors, including his weird obsession with feet and strangely sexual or suggestive scenes involving the actors on his shows. Blame It on Jorge did an amazing deep dive and investigation into the whole Dan Schneider situation with a video in 2018 that definitely deserves a watch if you want to learn more on this situation. Hanging Munchkin. Another classic movie urban legend from the iconic Wizard of Oz from 1939. It's a well-known and documented hoax, stating that in certain original prints of the film there can be found a scene where in the background a cast member hangs themselves, which was caught on film. People began to think it was only available in versions predating 1988, which is when it was theorized that this was edited out. However, this was not the case, as the hanging figure cannot be found in any version of the movie, and this was simply an edited video. Still a well-edited and put together hoax nonetheless. And due to many other very real controversies regarding the production of the film, it's easy to see why people believed this may actually be real. Happy Appy. Happy Appy is another internet creepypasta from the golden age of lost episodes. Not to say that it's an amazing piece of fiction by any means, but it's definitely a long one. Can't dispute that. It tells the story of a lost kids show titled Happy Appy, about an anthropomorphic apple of the same name who tells children how to deal with various injuries. However, as with most lost episode creepypastas, it devolves into something much more disturbing as the episodes progress, until the final episode, which is some kind of strange recreation of 9/11, despite the episode being said to have aired on Nickelodeon in 1999. Years later, after it was written, the creator would reveal that the story was actually intended as a troll pasta. That is to say, it wasn't actually meant to be scary, and rather was meant to poke fun at the tropes of other creepypastas of the time. But also, just like the other old creepypastas from back then, it has had its chance to shine again, being reimagined in the modern day, just like its contemporaries of Dead Bart, Squidward's, and a few others. Kablam Episode 29. This is another non-existent piece of lost media, although it was said to be originally planned as an ending for the series before it was cancelled so that they could continue making more episodes, with the only proof of its existence being from internet episode guides, which listed this very episode, which also led to further rumors and speculation. But the original artist and producer of the Henry and June segments of Kablam, Mark Merrick, stated that this alleged finale episode 29 doesn't even exist and is merely a myth, despite people claiming to remember seeing the episode during their childhoods, although most at this point just chalk this up to another case of the Mandela effect. Little Mikey's death. So Little Mikey is actually a character featured in commercials of the Quaker Oats brand cereal called Life, which first started airing in 1971 and lasted for 12 years, making it one of the longest lasting TV commercial campaigns of all time. However, one very strange myth for his eventual departure from these ads is that Little Mikey died from the deadly combination of mixing together Pop Rocks and soda, which this on its own was a long perpetuated myth by parents and other kids. However, the actor who played Little Mikey, John Gilchrist, is still alive to this day, and the whole Pop Rock soda thing is just another urban legend. The actor himself even commented on the whole thing, which is pretty funny, and suggests this was a pretty big myth back in the day, saying, quote, "The folklore is that I ate Pop Rocks, the exploding candies, and I drank a soda and my stomach blew up." People further attributed Pop Rocks being taken off the shelves in the early 80s as proof that the substance was harmful. However, that was not actually the case, as it was just being rebranded under a different name after the rights to the product were purchased in 1985. But they have since returned to being called their more well-known name of Pop Rocks and are still available today. Local 58. Local 58, as we briefly mentioned earlier, is a fictional TV channel created by Chris Straub, as not only part of the Candle Cove creepypasta, but also as its own standalone analog horror series on YouTube, which has now become a mainstay of the genre, and one of the most popular series. The work contains a pretty cryptic story revolving around this broadcast station, as well as a plot possibly about an alien invasion of some kind, or some kind of eldritch creature trying to take over Earth. But whatever your interpretation, it's one of the earliest analog horror projects to get big here on YouTube, and is worth a watch in my opinion. Lost Episode Creepypastas. Lost episodes are a genre of creepypasta, or internet horror stories, which became widespread after the iconic Squidward's and Mouse.avi, which popularized the genre. Essentially, the formula involves a character typically revisiting a show from their childhood, only to find some sort of disturbing lost episode that nobody was meant to see. This led to other well-known stories like the aforementioned Happy Appy, Dead Bart, Candle Cove, the Ed and Eddie lost episode, you get the idea. Some of them even had videos accompanying the creepypastas, making them more realistic and scarier, at least to kids at the time, which was me. I remember watching the Red Mist Squidward video, and especially that Suicide Mouse video, and being really creeped out, despite the stories being obviously fake. Good times though. Marilyn Manson on the Wonder Years. This interesting theory suggested that the actor who played Paul on the TV series The Wonder Years would actually go on to become the musician known under the name Marilyn Manson, likely I guess due to their kind of similar appearances. However, this is easily disproved as the name of the actor that played Paul is Josh Saviano, while Marilyn Manson's real name is Brian Warner, so case closed. But apparently this was a big enough rumor back in the 90s that Saviano would get questions asking if he was secretly Manson. Mr. Ed was a zebra. Mr. Ed is a sitcom from the 1960s that aired for 6 seasons and 143 episodes about a talking horse of the same name as the title. However, a strange rumor went around that the horse in the show was not actually a horse at all, but rather a zebra, which had to be used because the crew couldn't actually find a horse that would obey their instructions and instead just settled with a zebra, thinking that people wouldn't notice due to the show being filmed in black and white. Many people cited the fact that referee stripes couldn't be seen in old football game recordings in black and white, and assumed the same situation was happening with the zebra playing Mr. Ed. However, this isn't the case, as zebras have other distinct characteristics that would be identifiable even in black and white. Also, the main source for this appears to be a Snopes Lost Legends article, which has been used to perpetuate urban legends that are actually false as a means of demonstrating how random internet articles can fabricate stories and false narratives. Rude Removal. Rude Removal is probably the most infamous episode of Cartoon Network's animated series, Dexter's Laboratory, as the Season 2 episode went unaired due to concerns about the segment, which featured the characters swearing, albeit in a censored fashion. Some even doubted its existence at first, as the episode was nowhere to be found, until in 1998 it debuted at an animation festival, and was later more broadly released in January of 2013 by Adult Swim with the full episode. Shaggy is a stoner. Quite the well-known Scooby-Doo theory, but one that's been disproven by actual cast and crew members who said that association was never intentional for the character, at least initially. He was actually meant to be more of a beatnik stereotype, members of an anti-materialistic lifestyle from the 50s and 60s that expressed themselves through different kinds of art, aka hippies, I guess. With Casey Kasem, the original voice actor of the character, saying that his inspiration for portraying Shaggy was a character called Walter Denton from the series Our Miss Brooks. The Simpsons predicts the future. Not only is this a really popular notion, but it's one I can't really discount, being that they have seemingly accurately predicted many future events quite a few times over the years, sometimes with incredible detail as well. I mean, for a show as long-running as The Simpsons, it makes sense that one or two things might play out similarly in real life, acting as a sort of prediction, but there are just so many that it gets to that creepy and almost unexplainable territory. Although it has since become something it's known for, and people look for comparisons now, fueling a sort of confirmation bias, but still, some of these are eerily accurate. For example, how about the final twist on Game of Thrones involving a certain dragon? I won't go into spoilers here in case you haven't watched the show, but the depiction in The Simpsons is quite similar. Or how about Disney purchasing 20th Century Fox, Lady Gaga halftime show, Ebola outbreak, autocorrect, the pandemic, or how about Donald Trump becoming president? So yeah, make of these instances what you will, I guess. Veggie Monster. For some reason, a strange rumor went around in the early 2000s that the Cookie Monster was going to be rebranded as the Veggie Monster, as a way of promoting healthier eating to kids. Many cite the origin of this myth from a Jimmy Kimmel Live episode with the character Grover from Sesame Street, who said the Cookie Monster was going on a diet and that he only eats fruits and vegetables now. And apparently there were discussions of having this kind of a character at some point, but they knew they couldn't replace such an iconic one for the series, and so just kept him how he was. Weird Matt / Graggle Simpson. Again, with The Simpsons, we have quite the infamous internet hoax of a fake Simpsons character called Graggle Simpson, also sometimes called Gumbly or Weird Matt / Yellow Matt, originally as a reference to the series creator Matt Groening. The character likely originated in 2015 from the Japanese board 2chan, however it wouldn't be until 2021 and 2022 that the character would go viral, with many claiming that he was part of the show the entire time, attempting to gaslight people into believing some strange Mandela effect occurred and that this member of the Simpsons family always existed. Obviously not actually the case, but still interesting nonetheless. Up the butt, Bob. This refers to an alleged quote from one of the contestants on a game show called The Newlywed Game, where newly married couples are asked questions and have to predict how their partners would answer said questions. One of the host's favorite questions to ask was, "What was the strangest place you've ever made whoopee?" To which I was like, what the f does that even mean? According to Google, either it's to celebrate wildly or have sex, so yeah. However, a line that was brought up quite frequently as one of the contestants' responses was, "That'd be up the butt, Bob." However, the host, Bob Eubanks, apparently didn't remember such a quote ever being said on the show, leading to it reaching an urban legend status, until the clip finally did officially resurface, proving this one to be true despite it not playing out exactly as people remembered it. A Derp in the Life. This was a rumored episode of My Little Pony from Season 3 that could be found in a 2012 to 2013 schedule, labeling it as episode 55. However, this was all a hoax, as no such episode was ever released. Angela Anaconda caused a divorce. One of the more forgotten cartoons of the late 90s and early 2000s is a show called Angela Anaconda, about the title character and her friends, mostly known though for its unique art style. But one of the most infamous urban legends comes from a post that describes a user's experience with the show, or rather with a short that was made for the Digimon movie, which the OP was seeing with his family, which caused him to cry, and eventually made the family leave the theater, then get into a car accident, which in turn may have contributed to the divorce of an already rocky marriage. Sounds a little far-fetched, but it could very well be true. I mean, the whole story is so weird it seems almost impossible to make up, but it came from 4chan, so who knows. Barney's cocaine stash. A really interesting myth was circulated in the early 2000s that the actor who played Barney, everyone's favorite or not so favorite dinosaur, was addicted to cocaine, even getting busted in the middle of filming one of the episodes, with drug dogs sniffing out a hidden compartment in his tail where he kept the coke. This is, however, not really true. Not surprising given how common these dark myths about children's show figures were. Even Barney himself had many other rumors and pretty disturbing myths spread around. However, most of them, including this one, are just that, myths. That being said, there's more to come in this very iceberg. Game show doorknob answer. Another alleged game show answer here from the successful series Password, airing from 1961 to 1975 for over 1,000 episodes. In the show, contestants have to guess a word based on other single-word clues from other teammates. The legend for this one goes that in an unaired episode, the mystery word was bread, and the hint given was dough, to which the contestant, thinking they said door, said knob, like doorknob, which made the crowd erupt in laughter. This event has since seen some scrutiny and controversy, as the man was said to speak with a southern dialect that made him think the word being said was door and not dough. He allegedly went on to try and sue the game show, which likely led to the episode never being aired. However, it has been recounted by those who somehow saw it, including an actor from the TV show MASH, so maybe it really did happen, although as far as solid proof goes, it's really hard to say. I Was a Teenage Gary transformation scene. I Was a Teenage Gary is an episode from season 1 of the iconic SpongeBob SquarePants TV show, where SpongeBob and Squidward are injected with snail plasma, and eventually by the end of the episode, both fully transform into snails. However, with SpongeBob, there is a dramatic transformation sequence, whereas with Squidward, there's not, despite many people claiming to remember one. Instead, when watching the episode today, it simply shows him being injected, and subsequently we see him in his fully transformed state. But people remember this scene very differently, to the point of it becoming a case of the Mandela effect, which I believe I covered in that Iceberg. Essentially, people think this scene might have been edited out or was only aired briefly, but it has never surfaced and there's no evidence of any such scene existing at all. Still, the reason people believe they remember such a scene is because of how disturbing they remember it being, saying it gave them nightmares as kids and that it was something they could never forget. But it could just be people remembering the SpongeBob transformation and grouping it together with Squidward, as it still is recognized as a pretty creepy episode overall, as far as early SpongeBob episodes go, that is. Mark from Sonic Boom is based on Chris Chan. So because of the whole Sonic Boom arms controversy, which Chris Chan was a major part of, basically the only noteworthy part of to be honest, it kind of makes sense when you look at the character of Mark the Tapir that it could possibly be a reference to Chris Chan, being that he's got the glasses and that he's basically Sonic's #1 fan. But the writers have since denied this claim, saying he's just based on the superfan trope. But the fact that Mark also draws Sonic without the blue arms makes you think, maybe he really is based on Chris Chan. Although with Chris being such a controversial figure, they could never actually admit it. Pink Morning Cartoon. One of the more iconic pieces of lost media here, and one I surprisingly don't think I've ever had the chance to bring up on this channel. It was a children's animated show that was broadcast on a local station in Columbus, Ohio, with the episode being produced from the mid-90s all the way until 2004. At first, the show was very obscure and only remembered and recognized online as the Pink Morning Cartoon. However, eventually through many videos diving deeper into the subject, it was revealed that it was actually a religious series called TV8 Kids Fun Fest, and quite a few clips have since surfaced online, but there are many other episodes of the show that remain lost today. Pokemon cause seizures in Japan. Okay, so most of you probably know about this, because this in fact was a very real thing that happened in Japan when the infamous episode Denno Senshi Porygon was aired. This is because the episode was edited in such a way where there were flashing bright lights and visual effects that induced photosensitive epileptic seizures in those with epilepsy in Japan, leading to over 600 children being hospitalized and led to the episode being pulled from air, as well as it never actually being officially broadcast in any other country from this point on, and also led to the anime itself being put under hiatus for 4 months. Definitely one of the most controversial moments in the history of the Pokemon franchise. And looking back, it's scary to think that even just a seemingly innocuous episode of a cartoon can have such a devastating effect. Rugrats is all in Angelica's head. So this is a fan theory I covered in the Cartoon Conspiracy Iceberg, which I just did not too long ago, so I won't get into too much depth here, but basically this originates from a creepypasta and is essentially a fan fiction, which states that all of the Rugrats are figments of Angelica's imagination, and all of them died at birth, shortly after being born, or were never born at all. It goes even further into absolute insanity in the All Grown Up series, where the characters are all aged up, and explains this by Angela being even more insane due to her constant drug use, which results in her eventual death at the end of the series. And somehow, someway, this is not even the most disturbing Rugrats entry on this list. SCP-993. SCP-993 is a similar case to a lot of the other Lost Episode creepypastas, in that it is supposed to be a children's show that causes some sort of misfortune to its viewers. It's described as a television program called Bobble the Clown, which depicts the title character learning a new skill or activity. However, it is said that when the program is viewed by those older than 10, they just fall unconscious until the episode is over, while those younger say that the show teaches them about cannibalism, torture, and murder, which typically results in psychiatric damage to those who view it. Not much of an urban legend, just an SCP horror story that happens to be TV related. Slender Man in Gravity Falls. This was an infamous hoax that I can vividly remember making its rounds on the internet a while back, and I hadn't even watched the show, but I can remember people talking about this for how real it actually looked, but it turns out the image was just edited. But later on, in a graphic novel written by the show's creator, Alex Hirsch, titled Gravity Falls Lost Legends, Slender Man does actually make an appearance, so there you go. Special Ed. Okay, so this one has actually been widely debated and talked about for years, and that is the alleged episode of Ed, Edd n Eddy called Special Ed. It is referenced in an interview with the series creator, Danny Antonucci, who said it was an idea they tossed around, but said it was quote-unquote too real, and subsequently threw out the idea. There are no scripts or storyboards available from the episode, and it likely didn't even get past this initial idea phase, so we can only speculate what the episode was going to revolve around, which has since propelled it to urban legend status. The Amazing World of Gumball Remedial School Pitch. A show no one is probably surprised to see make an appearance on this list, given how many conspiracies, creepypastas, and other mysteries there are for this cartoon. This myth here suggests that the Amazing World of Gumball was originally going to focus on a school for rejected cartoon characters, which I gotta say does kinda sound like an interesting concept, and would kind of explain why there are so many different kinds of characters with such drastically different looks, styles, and designs. And well, what do you know, this one is actually true. The show's creator, Ben Beauclair, explained in an interview with ToonZone his process of conceiving the original story. Quote, I started looking back at the characters that I created for commercials. It was a big mashup of 2D, stylized 3D, realistic 3D, and even stop motion. I lined them up and the result looked varied and unusual. I really liked the idea of a show without graphic unity. All these characters had been rejected. They had no purpose. I found that quite endearing. I integrated them in the photo of a schoolyard and was quite excited with the outcome. I pitched a show about a remedial school for hapless, rejected cartoon characters set up in the real world. Daniel Leonard, who is in charge of the development studio, wasn't convinced. He thought that the concept was too sad, and that it wasn't very cool to make jokes about remedial schools. I have to admit that in retrospect, he was quite right. It felt like a mild cartoon version of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the concept naturally lent itself to pessimistic and mean-spirited stories. But he liked the look of it and encouraged me to pitch a different show with a similar design approach. The Dark Side of the Rainbow. Interestingly enough, this is a kind of strange phenomenon where when the Dark Side of the Rainbow album is played alongside the film The Wizard of Oz, you get a sort of synchronized experience, which some believe was actually intentional. This was first reported in a 1995 article written by Charles Savage, who suggested that if you started the album right as the MGM lion roars in the intro of the movie, then you will get an experience that makes you think the whole thing might have been planned out, as the music and song lyrics correspond to the action and plot. However, since this was reported on and became more popular, the members of Pink Floyd have gone on record saying they didn't intend the album to have any connection to the film, and the whole thing is just one big coincidence, an example of confirmation bias and apophenia, or even a specific phenomenon which has since been coined from this event called the Dark Side of Oz, and led to people finding other songs that linked well along with other films, such as Pink Floyd's The Wall and WALL-E. The Family Guy effect. Now, there are a couple of definitions on what this could mean. Urban Dictionary references it as basically doing something that is funny so much until the point it stops being funny. However, in later years, it's now basically used to describe memes that are featured in the show, which causes it to go viral before sharply falling off a cliff in popularity, which ends up killing it. Some notable examples of this phenomenon being the Peanut Butter Jelly Time song, or references to Chuck Norris. However, in a show as long-running as Family Guy, there are bound to be memes that fade in recognition over the many years that the show is airing, so this is not all that surprising, really. The Wyoming Incident. The Wyoming incident is one of the most interesting creepypastas ever made. Not just because it's one of the first of its kind in terms of internet horror storytelling, but it was also one of the earliest ARGs as well, and some people even believed it could have been a real thing, for a time at least. It's basically a lost episode kind of creepypasta, alleging that a broadcast interruption took place on a Wyoming news station, which had a video created for it later on, which by modern analog horror standards is pretty basic, but was way ahead of its time for when it was released. Then of course it links to the Happy Cube ARG, which is about a forum where people discuss the act of cubing, which essentially is just tracking down and killing people. So yeah, not real, but still one of the most influential pieces of early internet horror. Timmy in a well. Here we have an urban legend associated with another old TV show about an animal, this time a dog named Lassie. In the show, the dog is known for saving a boy named Timmy on numerous occasions, which led to a catchphrase that became synonymous with the show. What's that, Lassie? Timmy fell in the well? However, despite this being seen as a common trope in the show, which it was, Timmy never actually fell inside a well per se. Lassie saved him from other dangers on many occasions, but never an actual well, meaning this is a case of the Mandela effect, as even after 561 episodes, this never actually occurred. Uncensored Sailor Mouth. Just like the infamous uncensored rude removal episode, we have a similar situation with the SpongeBob episode Sailor Mouth, which again has the characters cursing, albeit in a heavily censored manner. However, when recording the episode, Tom Kenny, the voice actor of SpongeBob, stated that it was hard to record the episode authentically without actually swearing, and so they were actually allowed to use curse words while recording the episode, which was later censored in post. Meaning there does at least exist the audio clips for the characters of SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs all swearing from the episode, although no clips have ever surfaced online. Any porn in the store? So this one could be pretty easily explained, although by that title you'd probably be surprised to hear that this was thought to be a quote from a SpongeBob episode titled Midlife Crustacean, a pretty strange one from season 3 in which Patrick, SpongeBob, and Mr. Krabs do a panty raid, which in itself is a wild concept for a kids show, but this line comes in when the group is at the laundromat.
Let's party! Any porn in this store? Wait a minute. This is a laundromat!
Yeah, to some people it sounds like Mr. Krabs is asking any porn in the store, which is weird, but this episode kind of as a whole is, so is that really what he said here? Did they just sneak this in? Well, no, because according to the official transcripts, what he really says is any port in the store before cutting himself off. Although I will admit, it does sound like he says porn here. Minerva Mink Lost Shorts. These are an alleged series of lost shorts featuring the character of Minerva Mink, which were said to have been not released due to the sexualized design of her character, which it wasn't felt were appropriate for the Animaniacs. And it's true that these two shorts where she appears in were edited to make her cleavage less pronounced. However, when the creator of the Animaniacs was asked in a Reddit AMA, he said there were no unreleased shorts, debunking the idea that there were any lost produced shorts featuring the character. Alexis, Texas. This is a pretty strange myth that Hannah Montana, the TV show, was originally called Alexis, Texas, before it had to be changed due to that name being associated with an adult film actress. Now, is there any truth to this? Well, not really, because Hannah Montana's pilot episode aired in March of 2006, while Alexis, Texas didn't even shoot her first film until October of that year, so if they really wanted to use that name, they very well could have, suggesting this whole thing is all just made up. Chuck Cunningham Syndrome. Essentially, this is a trope or phenomenon found in media where a character, instead of being killed off or having any kind of traditional send-off, is abruptly retconned out of a story with little to no explanation given, with the other characters not even really acknowledging their existence or departure. The trope is named after the character of Chuck Cunningham from a long-running sitcom series from the 50s titled Happy Days, who was the older brother in the Cunningham family but later was strangely wiped from existence, with the the parents in the show no longer even acknowledging his existence at all, saying they only had 2 kids. Not exactly an urban legend, but a real thing that can sometimes happen, especially in live-action TV shows when there are issues getting returning cast members, or other complications with production regarding actors. Danny Gonzalez on Let's Make a Deal. Danny Gonzalez is an American commentary YouTuber who has seen quite a bit of success on the platform, to put it lightly, amassing over 6 million subscribers. But interestingly enough, someone on his subreddit actually found him and his wife on an episode of Let's Make a Deal, and this is actually true and can be watched today in episode 9136 or season 9 episode 136. Faith Buddies. Faith Buddies is another television-related creepypasta about a religious public access TV show called Faith Buddies, which featured puppets telling stories from the Bible and singing songs, but would also include graphic imagery, including people being tortured in various ways. The main puppet narrating the stories was a Kermit-like one called Pinky, but as the show comes to a close at the end of the story, all the puppets except Pinky are gone, and the studio that the show was being filmed at is doused in gasoline and burned to the ground, along with the Pinky puppet. Needless to say, it's not actually real and just a standard lost episode creepypasta. Family Guy predicted the Boston bombing. As we discussed, it's usually The Simpsons that's associated with real-life predictions, but this time it's Family Guy and the Boston Marathon bombing, a domestic terrorist attack that took place in 2013 and claimed the lives of 3 people and injured hundreds. However, a hoax clip was circulated which was espoused by conspiracy theorists as proof of Family Guy predicting the event. Clips from an episode called Turpin Cowboy were edited together to make it resemble the real-life incident, but despite the video itself being a hoax, there were some notable similarities between the events in the episode and the actual tragedy, which led to the episode being pulled from air. Girl jumps off cruise to see SpongeBob. Another one of the darker urban legends here, claiming that a young girl sometime in the early 2000s jumped off of a cruise ship and drowned because she wanted to find SpongeBob. This one definitely made its rounds, and was interestingly likely made up by parents trying to scare their kids into not imitating something they see on TV, especially with SpongeBob. Yep, the whole thing was made up and just ended up spreading like wildfire, as most cartoon myths do. No instances even similar to the one in the story have happened, at least none that were ever reported. Hito Gata. Well, stop me if you've heard this one before. One of the most iconic pieces of lost media in recent memory, and one discussed by basically every lost media YouTuber, myself included. But the basics are that this is an unconfirmed Japanese commercial that aired in the late 90s or early 2000s, and is generally accepted as some sort of PSA that was shown in schools, and may have featured 2 white humanoid figures on train tracks along with some sort of text, with the commercial being known by those who saw it to be very creepy, leaving it ingrained in their memory. However, despite all the searching over the years, it seems we're not any closer to solving the mystery or finding this lost ad, making some believe that it never even existed in the first place, and is possibly just a lost media hoax. Either way, it still remains one of the most intriguing, ongoing lost media mysteries. Invader Dib. This was an alleged TV special or movie that was said to be being created for the show Invader Zim as a series finale that continued from the end of season 2. However, one of the original writers from the show has since debunked these rumors, claiming there was no such planned ending, and the name of the special only popped up as a joke, while the rest of the details of the alleged special were all internet myths and fabrications. Jimi Hendrix Tonight Show interview. Allegedly, in the 1960s, there was an interview with world-famous guitarist Jimi Hendrix on The Tonight Show, which many people can recall, in which he was asked what it felt like to be the greatest guitarist ever, to which Jimi replied, "I don't know, you'd have to ask Phil Keaggy." However, it seems this likely isn't the case, as the alleged interview cannot be found. Also, it doesn't really add up considering this Phil Keaggy guy, especially at the time, was a fairly unknown guitarist, at least in comparison to Jimi Hendrix. Kurt Cobain Ren and Stimpy song. Another classic lost media urban legend here, that being that Kurt Cobain of the famous rock band Nirvana was such a huge fan of Ren and Stimpy that he tried to write a song for the show, but ended up being rejected, because at the time he wasn't yet famous. So the story goes that the company executives passed on a song from Nirvana's lead singer without even knowing it. No copies of the song have ever surfaced online, and the only proof of this even happening at all is from a podcast in which Stimpy's voice actor, Billy West, recalls the story. But in May of 2022, when asked about it again, Billy West denied that Kurt ever recorded or made a song for Ren and Stimpy, basically cementing this one as just a myth. Lost SpongeBob Baseball Lecture. A lot of SpongeBob stuff on here, but thankfully this is one I hadn't heard of yet. A Lost Media Wiki forum thread describes it, saying, quote, "Back in 2005, I was on a trip with my family and some friends in Texas. While we were there, we stopped by a baseball game. Before the game started, an animation played of SpongeBob giving a lecture about having fun. I don't remember much about it, but I know for a fact that a SpongeBob animation played before the baseball game started. The thing is, I've been unable to find it anywhere online. If that wasn't perplexing enough, I heard something back then that there was also a The Incredibles animation that played at one point a while ago too, but I doubt that holds true at all. The hunt is on." However, despite a few leads, most of which were from more modern events with SpongeBob taking place in Texas, the investigation kind of stalled, and this alleged instance of lost media has yet to be located. Rugrats Russian Roulette Dialogue. For some reason, there was a strange rumor that went around regarding the Rugrats episode Grandpa's Bedbug, where he comes back from a game of Russian roulette. You know, the game where you spin a bullet inside of a revolver cylinder and then see how unlucky you are. To which Dee Dee asks if he won, clearly not understanding the rules of the game. However, this scene doesn't actually exist, and most of the dialogue is possibly repurposed from an episode of King of the Hill. Celine Delgado Broadcast. This is a very disturbing broadcast that was seen in the 90s in Mexico on a channel called Canal 5, or Channel 5, which had a segment that showed photos of missing persons as well as information related to them. Not too out of the ordinary exactly, but the way it was presented is what made it so memorable and haunting, especially one related to a woman named Celine Delgado. Now, this broadcast is very much real, however it's unknown if she is actually a real missing person, as those who have tried to dig into the mystery have come up empty-handed, not even being able to find a person that went missing by that name. And since Channel 5 has been known to post intentionally disturbing things to social media, likely to drum up attention to their station, it's possible that she doesn't actually exist and the whole thing was just a creepy hoax. Sesame Street was supposed to kill off Ernie. Another interesting and frankly quite bizarre Sesame Street rumor that Ernie would be killed off due to Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets and the voice of Ernie, passing away in 1990. However, there were never any plans to get rid of such an iconic character, even if Jim Henson had passed away. But that didn't stop rumors from circulating that he was not going to just be removed from the show, but actually killed off, with one of the most prominent ideas being he would be diagnosed with leukemia and actually die from it. The Ed Sullivan Show briefly managed to halt crime in America. Legend has it that during an interview with the Beatles in 1964 on The Ed Sullivan Show, crime in all categories dropped across the US, including an instance where no major crime was reported taking place in New York City between 8 and 9 p.m. This is supposedly due to the fact that the show had 73 million viewers at the time. This likely didn't actually have any major impact on crime though, and if it did, it was relatively short-lived. Not to mention, it's hard to really gauge what factors would be at play in regards to a sudden decrease in crime, and you can't exactly just attribute that to a random TV interview, even if it was a big show and with arguably the most famous people in the world at the time. I've never seen so many children since original dialogue. On the trivia page of IMDb for the South Park episode, Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride, there is a section that can be found which states, quote, "The announcer makes an incomplete remark about a tackle. I haven't seen so many children molested since ... This was rumored to have been followed by a line, quote, "Since Michael Jackson came to town," which was supposedly censored after the broadcast premiere, but there is no evidence of this. The Downer Original Draft. The Downer is a rather infamous episode of The Amazing World of Gumball, which is pretty dark and sees the character of Gumball wishing everyone in his town would disappear, only to have that wish granted and only go insane because of it, although eventually he finally realizes that it was all inside of his head. However, according to the series creator, Ben Beauclair, the original draft written for the episode was much darker and had to be significantly rewritten, although this darker original draft of the script has not since surfaced online. 9/11 news broadcast interrupted Dragon Ball Z. One of the most popular cases of the Mandela effect and one of the strangest pieces of alleged lost media from Brazil are the broadcasts of Dragon Ball Z, which were interrupted on September 11th, 2001 by news coverage of the terror attacks that took place on that day. Specifically, it was said to have interrupted Goku's Super Saiyan 3 transformation scene in the Buu saga. However, it seems this is all merely a hoax and a case of the Mandela effect, as many people claim to remember seeing this live, despite this episode of Dragon Ball Z not actually airing that day, not to mention there's no actual footage or evidence of this even taking place. This specific episode of Dragon Ball Z didn't end up airing until 2002, although some have pointed out that it could have been a different episode that was broadcast unofficially on an obscure channel. However, there is still no evidence as of yet that this happened. Still, there are a few fan recreations out there. Betty White 2014 death hoax. The actress Betty White has since passed away as of December 31st, 2021 at the age of 99. However, back in 2014 there was a death hoax, which led to it trending on Twitter thanks to a misinterpreted headline from a satire article, which read, quote, "Dies peacefully in her Los Angeles home." Dies as in spelled with a Y, talking about hair, not actual death. Caillou Charlie dub. Back on the Lost Media Wiki forums, where a user describes their experience back in 2010 of seeing a dub of the show Caillou, which changed the character's name to Charlie for some reason. It's possible it could have been a very obscure unofficial dub, although there is no existing evidence of it that's been found. While the most prominent theory is that the show the OP remembered might have been a different one, called Charlie and Mimo, which is a similar kind of kids show, but this time featuring a koala named Charlie. Doraemon talent. So this was pretty difficult to find information on in English, but on a Japanese site translated using Google Translate, it seems this is an urban legend of a lost episode of the Doraemon anime that was strange and had no coherent story, and is notable for having bad animation. However, there is no actual proof of the existence of the episode, only accounts of those who claim to witness it, most likely just a creepypasta situation. Ed, Edd n Eddy 3 Men pilot. 3 Men, or sometimes called 3 Dudes, is the alleged original pilot episode of Ed, Edd n Eddy, and was way different from the final product, supposedly featuring the 3 main characters who were named after Berlin, Paris, and London, and were in their early 20s instead of being kids. But searching for any info doesn't turn up much on this episode, and everything we have are unsubstantiated rumors, and there are plenty of these hoaxes in the Ed, Edd n Eddy fandom, so it's pretty safe to say this is another one of those urban legends. Egg and spoon bumper cause nightmares. Now here's another case that actually turned out to be real, although the end result isn't as disturbing as some people made it out to be, although if you saw this as a very young kid, I could see you being a little creeped out by it. El Chavo del Ocho final episode. El Chavo del Ocho is a Mexican sitcom series that aired in the 70s, ending in 1980 after 8 seasons and 290 episodes, and features the orphan El Chavo and the adventures of him and his friends. However, there is a rumored ending which was never aired, an alternate ending in which Chavo would be killed in a car accident trying to save a child. And while that scene in particular was said to have never been filmed, it was alleged that they recorded goodbyes and tear-filled send-offs from the other characters. But again, there is no real evidence of this actually existing, and likely is just another urban legend. Ghost in 3 Men and a Baby. In the 1987 comedy film 3 Men and a Baby, there is a scene that has become somewhat of an urban legend thanks to what viewers believe they saw in the background, which was never meant to be in the shot. A person standing behind the curtains of a window in the background, which caused many rumors to stir that this was a boy who was killed in the house that the scene was filmed in, meaning this was a ghost caught on tape. Not only that, but more rumors started to spread that the mother of the child ended up suing the production studio due to her son appearing in the film as a ghost. But none of this was actually true. In reality, it's just a standee or cardboard cutout which was used for advertising. And it actually appears a second time in the film in a much closer shot, proving this was all just a misunderstanding. Gurgles and Bugman. This was said to be a show about a creepy clown and a bug guy who would kill people on public access TV. You know, the usual stuff. But just like with Candle Cove, when the parents walk in on the kid watching it, the TV isn't even plugged in. Yeah, another creepypasta here, if you couldn't tell already. Hell's Kitchen contestant JR. This is again something brought up in the Lost Media Iceberg, but basically in season 3 of the Gordon Ramsay cooking show Hell's Kitchen, where contestants are pitted against one another to see who's the best chef, there was a contestant who was completely removed from the show, almost all scenes even showing him except for a select few. It's possible that the reason that he was cut from the show so aggressively was that he spread rumors, ironically, about another contestant on the show, or possibly leaked spoilers for the upcoming season, although it's kind of unclear. Still, most scenes involving him were cut and are now lost. John Ritter's testicles were visible in an episode of Three's Company. So, quite the title on this entry, but a little too specific, which means you know it's true. Airing starting in 1977, there was a sitcom that ran for 8 seasons called Three's Company, about 2 women who move in together to an apartment with another man. The man being a character called Jack, played by actor John Ritter, who accidentally, in an episode called The Charming Stranger, revealed his balls to the camera. Whoops. Judge Judy's gavel. So this was a pretty controversial one on the Mandela Effect Iceberg, as many people remembered Judge Judy using the gavel on her show. And I mean, with over 6,000 episodes, you'd think she would use it at least once, right? Well, it turns out I was wrong in that video, and she did. There is actually a clip from season 1 where she uses it. Even though this does appear on a lot of urban legend and Mandela Effect lists, this one is actually real, despite being labeled as a myth. Pigeon Man himself. Pigeon Man is an episode of Hey Arnold from season 1, which sees Arnold taking a sick pigeon to a man named Vincent who can cure the bird. However, by the end of the episode, he is taken away by his pigeons toward the sun, with some suggesting in a dark theory that this could be a metaphor for the Pigeon Man passing on, while some even suggested he was ending himself by jumping off of the roof. Or that in the original planned ending, he did just that. But these are all just unsubstantiated rumors and fan theories at the end of the day. Kubo's Last Minutes on Air. Kubo is a children's television network which launched in 2006 and is actually planned to relaunch on November 9th of this year. Probably already happened by the time I'm releasing this video. Anyway, there was a viral video that came out in 2021 showing the alleged final minutes on air, which were quite disturbing. However, as most of you will recognize, this was not real, but just a very well-made hoax. Ringo voiced the Duck Brothers in Courage. The Duck Brothers are a trio of characters found in the Courage the Cowardly Dog show, featured in an episode also called The Duck Brothers. The urban legend comes in with the voice actor of the Three Ducks, which was purportedly Ringo Starr, famed drummer of the Beatles. However, this was proven to be false in an interview with series creator John R. Dilworth in a video by Rebel Taxi. SpongeBob Adult Party Cartoon. Back with the wild SpongeBob rumors again. This one came about likely because of the Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon, an edgier adults-only spin-off of the original cartoon, which made some people believe that SpongeBob would be getting a somewhat similar treatment. However, these were all just, again, unsubstantiated rumors, possibly originating from old forum posts, as most myths do. Stubbs Clubhouse. And we got another TV-related creepypasta about a show called Stubbs Clubhouse, featuring Stubbs the Clown, which aired at late times on an obscure channel called Channel Bebo. What follows is your usual creepypasta tropes. Nostalgia goes out and buys an old VHS tape containing the show, only to find out it's much more disturbing than the narrator remembers, showing the clown torturing his victims. The Tiny Toon Stalker. Now, thanks to YouTuber Bernie Vids, we have a more clear picture on what's going on with this bizarre case. Essentially, it all starts from an article titled Terror from the Year 1994, found on an old forum, which states that a fanfiction writer by the name of Dennis Falk became an internet stalker with a rabid obsession with voice actress Tress MacNeille, who voiced Babs Bunny, and it eventually forced Tiny Toons to end as a whole. However, both Falk as well as another member of the community, Alan Fishbeck, denied being the Tiny Toons stalker, which leads us to wonder if such a stalker even existed at all, or if this was just another tall tale. Especially when you consider if that is the case, then this real-life stalker may have inspired a character that appeared directly in the show, which if this person was real is the last thing you would want to do. But this rabbit hole goes pretty deep, so check out Bernie Vid's video if you're interested. Tom Green Show Hitler Sketch. The Tom Green Show is a comedy television series first aired in 1994 until March of 2000, and is known for its shock comedy of Green performing controversial acts in public, which leads us to the theory that his show was suddenly cancelled by MTV after he made a sketch in which he walked into a bar mitzvah wearing a Hitler costume. However, Green has since denied the rumor in an interview, saying it was never filmed and they wouldn't have even considered such an idea. Turner Doomsday Video. This is a rather disturbing one, and well, it's actually real. The story behind this ominous short video is that it was created by the founder of CNN, Ted Turner, before the network launched in 1980, and was intended to be broadcast in the event that the world was going to end. It sounds too wild to be true, but the video can be viewed on YouTube and features a performance by members of the US military of the Christian hymn Nearer My God to Thee. When the going gets goth. I hope somebody's keeping track of the amount of times I've talked about this, because I'm sure not at this point. But anyways, this was an alleged Canadian TV animation production that was at some point cancelled, likely in the early 2000s, with not much other info to go on, except that the protagonist of the show was meant to be a girl named Veronica Von Goth, and that there was possibly planned to be 13 episodes for the first season. But since there's little to no evidence of its existence in any form, it's likely that this is all just a hoax. Black Diamond Disney VHS tapes are worth thousands. There are a bunch of listings trying to sell these Black Diamond Disney VHS tapes for thousands of dollars on eBay, but are they really worth that much? Well, for the most part, no. However, certain ones like the Beauty and the Beast are extremely rare and are being sold currently sometimes for hundreds, despite there being multiple listings in the thousands figure. And the rest, well, some are possibly reaching the hundreds figure, most just sell for 20 to 50 bucks as of now. This myth that these VHS tapes are worth a lot more were spread by articles stating the value of these items were higher than they actually are, which likely inflated a lot of those listed prices even more. Disney Kid Zone. This was an interesting hoax of a new channel owned by Disney, said to be launching in 2011, which was posted to multiple wikis before it was removed for being fake, but not before it was picked up by other wikis and sites, which further spread the rumor of this new channel called Kid Zone, which was described as follows. Quote, Disney Kid Zone is an upcoming American children's digital cable and satellite television channel that launched on May 21, 2011. The channel, which replaced Disney XD. Disney Kid Zone airs programming primarily aimed at children ages 6 through 16, drawing largely on the libraries of both parent companies. Disney Kid Zone targets a dual audience, young children with original and acquired children's programs. The channel is available to approximately 60 million subscribers. Kind of a random hoax, but yeah. Dragon Tales Too Hot for TV. This refers to a pretty obscure parody video found on the forums of the site TV Tropes titled Too Hot for TV, where users discuss the video, asking if it even exists. In the actual article for the series, it says, quote, there was once a rumor on this wiki that the creators made a darker and edgier video special for adults called Too Hot for TV, where one of the characters expresses disgust at the idea. No evidence of this special exists, and all the examples mentioning it were promptly deleted. Dreamfinders TV show. Here we have an unproduced Disney Channel series based on an attraction from the Epcot Center called Journey into Imagination. The show was called Dreamfinders and would have had kids traveling to the realm of imagination, but the show never ended up getting made. Promos do exist for the show, however, so it was definitely planned at some point, it was just never made, so this one is actually real. El Chavo Stalker. El Chavo del Ocho appears again on this list, and once again, the appearance of another stalker, but this time is different. Instead of just allegedly stalking the cast, this man, or being as some believed it to be some sort of demonic entity, can be seen in the actual show itself, in the background at various points. But is this real, or some kind of hoax or stunt created to stir up attention by the show's producers? Well, more than likely, these are just instances of cast members peeking in on the show, and nothing more. But either way, watching these clips without context, it can be kind of unsettling. First ever Stick Stickly appearance. So Stick Stickly is actually a real character from Nickelodeon, which is basically just a popsicle stick with googly eyes, and was the host of Nick in the Afternoon, a program block that aired from 1994 to 1998. But this alleged first appearance is likely talking about a creepypasta, which states that originally his design was slightly different, having smaller eyes and no nose. Some creepy stuff happens, and at the end of the videos he says, "It's been a long contest and the vote was close, but you, the kids, have decided. Coming right now, the classic you voted for, Candle Cove." So yeah, we get a tie-in with Candle Cove, so that's neat, I guess. Goku and Frieza go to KFC, the movie. Again, something that's come up a few times now in other icebergs, but yeah, this is pretty much just a joke entry, less of an actual urban legend and a fake piece of lost media, which is basically said to be a direct-to-DVD movie released in 2004 that features Goku and Frieza from Dragon Ball Z going to KFC. It sounds really ridiculous, and it is, but there is actually a real Dragon Ball KFC commercial, so not that weird, I guess. Joanna Lopez broadcast. So similar to the Channel 5 Celine Delgado broadcast, we have a very disturbing live occurrence from a Chicago TV station which took place on January 14th, 1989, which showed for the entire night a single image of a missing person poster of a woman named Joanna Lopez, which due to its low quality, it's quite creepy and unsettling, especially if you continue to stare at it. Strangely enough, the image was also shown on a different channel in 1991, but this time for only 10 seconds. But when people looked into her case a bit further, no additional information could be found for a missing person from that time under that name. KCRC banned commercials kids went missing. So this whole rabbit hole comes from a kids commercial dating back to the early to mid 90s from Hong Kong, which freaked out a lot of people and started a bunch of rumors due to there being an extra kid in one of the scenes who later disappears, which made some think that this kid was actually a ghost that would later go on to haunt the other kids in the commercial and cause them all to die one by one. Yes, I know, very dramatic. But apparently this was a big deal in Hong Kong and caused a case of mass hysteria, although it can all be very easily explained when you realize that it's just a simple continuity error, and they just cut together different takes where they used additional actors. Naruto Sandbox Suffocation. This one is sadly real. It sounds like one of those urban legends you'd see in an LSSQ video, like the SpongeBob drowning case, which it is, but this one actually did happen, as can be seen on real news reports. What happened was a 10-year-old boy was buried in the sand and sadly ended up suffocating as he and his friends were trying to imitate something they saw in Naruto. Probably something to do with Gaara and his techniques, sand coffin, and sand burial. Nation Squid Christine Chubbuck footage. Another really sad and disturbing case here, and one of the more infamous pieces of lost media, especially when it comes to real-life tragedies, such as the on-air self-inflicted death of news anchor Christine Chubbuck, which has not had its footage recovered as of yet, but there was a video posted by YouTuber Nation Squid which had some alleged footage of the incident, although it turned out to be merely a recreation and not the real thing, leaving the real footage lost, probably for good, although the audio has since been found and can be viewed on YouTube. However, warning, it is very disturbing. Nick accidentally aired Happy Tree Friends. So according to a Spanish YouTube short, Nickelodeon allegedly accidentally aired Happy Tree Friends. You know, that very kid-friendly cartoon. Or maybe was hijacked to play the show as suggested by a Lost Media Wiki forum post. However, this definitely just seems like a hoax, because if you know anything about this show, it may look like a typical kids cartoon, but it's anything but that. No way they would willingly air this on their network. Nickelodeon Hamster Wheel broadcast. Another alleged piece of Nickelodeon lost media, which is detailed on a post on the r/tip-of-my-tongue subreddit about a creepy Nick broadcast which has never been identified and is unconfirmed to even exist. The post reads, quote, "When I was about 16, I came home from hanging with friends. I was a huge cartoon fan, still am, grabbed some food and settled into my bed to watch Nickelodeon. I knew it was Nick because it was the last channel I watched that day and no one shared the TV in my room. So I turned it on to see this creepy black, white, and gray scene where hundreds of nude humans are walking in a line over these hills in the background toward these giant hamster wheels in the front of the scene. They're walking towards the wheels as a few people are already in the wheels, walking endlessly and mindlessly in this robotic, zombie-like state. The people walking towards the wheels are also in a similar state, as if there is no life within their eyes. They're just cold or robotic. There's this wind-like noise whistling in the background. It looks real, not animated, and as I watch in awe at this dark scene, I come to a similar conclusion, and ask myself why Nick would have something so live and non-action, really, as the entire scene keeps just repeating itself, of more humans walking towards and in these hamster wheels. I just start thinking maybe it's just some weird short and it's kinda cool in a dark sort of way, but minutes go by and it starts to get dull watching this same scene, not doing anything else, so I quickly change the channel to something else, when in a split second I realize, wait a minute, what the fuck did I just watch? And change it back immediately, only to find SpongeBob on mid-episode. You could tell SpongeBob was on for a while, not like the weird short played first and it just came on or anything. Freaked out, I kept going back to surrounding channels thinking maybe it wasn't actually on Nick, but nothing had the hamster wheel video on. To be honest, it sounds like a bit of a creepypasta, but so have other pieces of lost media which ended up being found, and that many were initially thinking were hoaxes, so who knows. Rainbow Naughty broadcast. Rainbow is a British children's show which aired for over 1,000 episodes from 1972 to 1992 and featured various puppet characters. However, there was a more adult-themed comedy short which was created by the cast and crew as a joke to be played at their annual Christmas party. And eventually it did end up being found and is now available on YouTube, so yep, this one is real. I've never watched this show before, but it's still pretty surreal to see puppets from the 70s talking about playing with each other's balls. Rugrats Incredible Storyboard Jam. Okay, so we've talked about various cartoon urban legends by this point, but this right here is one of the most disturbing ones I have ever come across. And the worst part, it's real. What is this then, you might be asking? Well, for context, a storyboard jam is usually just a storyboard that is never intended to make it into an actual show and is just passed around by animators to include jokes and whatever other strange material they want to draw, I guess. And the one in question is called Incredible, created in 1998. And let me just say before we get into it, not only is this going to seem fake and like some sort of creepypasta or something, but I can't even really describe everything here, otherwise we're getting demonetized for sure. But just take a look at this leaked page. This is real. And to see it better, here is a colorized fan edit of the original leak. Go ahead and read this if you want. I don't think YouTube would like me to recount it though. And even more shockingly, it gets worse than this. This is just the leaked page that is available. Other pages which were likely destroyed featured sexual content between Stu and Angelica. Yes, this actually happened, apparently. What the fuck? SpongeBob Brazilian Defecation broadcast. An all-time classic, really. The story for this one goes that before the 2016 Olympics in Brazil, there was a now-lost episode of SpongeBob which was broadcast only in Brazil, where Squidward plays his clarinet hitting a so-called brown note, which makes the kids watching the show at the time poop their pants, which led to the episode being covered up. Now, this sounds made up, of course, because it most likely is. There is no documentation or any evidence to actually back any of this up, and honestly just sounds like a parody or a bizarre adaptation of the Pokemon seizure incident in Japan, which actually was a real and pretty tragic event, whereas this is just weird. Tax Doctor Beethoven's Fifth advert. Here we have another alleged piece of lost media found on a relatively obscure post on the Lost Media Wiki forums from a new user who writes about a lost Tax Doctor advert which seemingly has not been located, or been confirmed to even exist, likely due to its obscurity. It reads, quote, "I've been looking for what seems like forever for this commercial. I looked at YouTube video comments and replied to everyone who remembered it airing on The Good Night Show, and I emailed what I think is the Tax Doctor with no reply yet. I also looked for their website, which I think I found, but there was nothing. I searched Google for all sorts of Tax Doctor things. I even used the Wayback Machine. I'm depending on finding it here. Here's how I remember this version going. The commercial starts off with Beethoven's Fifth Symphony playing throughout the commercial. A narrator who was a man would talk in sort of a scary voice and talk about the Tax Doctor. I remember a green line that went up and down. It made a heartbeat noise. It looked like a heart rate monitor. Then it would switch to a screen with money flying away. It completely went away. It made the same noise as the original. The running scene never happened, I don't think. It went straight to the Tax Doctor in the bottom left corner, giving a thumbs up. It ran like a GIF. There was a logo, but money never fell on it. I also don't remember the small text. Money would fall on the Tax Doctor instead of the logo. I still remember that whoosh noise though. The narrator would stop and then it would play my main memory. It would finish off with the rest of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I'm starting to think it was taken down due to legal rights. They used the song without paying or permission. Please help me find this commercial. Jusha Park Fire. Not sure exactly why this one is on the list. This one is very real. It was an incident that took place in Brazil in 2001 during the taping of a show called Jusha Park. It was recorded in front of a live audience, and thankfully there were no deaths in relation to the incident. However, it was caught on tape, and it's still pretty unsettling to watch as the show goes from upbeat 1 second to having the set completely engulfed in flames only a short time later. A PSA showed the bodies of dead children. Possibly one of the most disturbing titles for an Iceberg entry I've ever read, and unfortunately, this one is actually true. In 1995, a PSA about the Rwandan genocide was released titled Shoeboxes, which is extremely upsetting and disturbing given the context. As the text in the PSA reads, "We know you hate being asked for money, so please send your old shoeboxes. We're running out of coffins. Give what you can." It definitely gets a strong message across, I'll give it to them. Combine that with the graphic images of starving and deceased kids along with the crying and creepy music, and you have one of the saddest and most disturbing PSAs ever made for sure. Barney 1930s serial killer. Here's that other Barney urban legend, and an even more insane one if you can believe it. A rumor that Barney and Friends was actually based on a real-life American serial killer from the 1930s. But does this actually have any merit? No. And if you needed any proof of this being fake, just look to where it likely originated. A post on Wattpad dedicated to urban legends. Need I say more? Well, I will. In garbled English, the message reads, "The TV show Barney is supposed to be happy, fun, and appealing to the younger ones, right? Well, it appears that the legend set back to the 1930s when a man named Barney dressed up every day in a dinosaur costume and stayed at the park. The reason was so he could lure in the little kids and kidnap them. He would force them to be happy all the time, or he would / them. If the kids acted bad and not happy, Barney would slice their necks." But none of this actually happened, although this story here might have been inspired by other real-life serial killers, such as John Wayne Gacy, who did actually dress up as a clown and children. Boy who took a coin out of his pocket. Okay, so fair warning on this one, not only is this really weird and messed up, but also this information is coming from a Google Translate translation of a Spanish YouTube video on the topic, so apologies if I get anything wrong here, but the story goes, from my understanding, that allegedly during an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants titled Bubble Stand, SpongeBob and Patrick make a business of teaching people how to blow bubbles, and during the episode, Squidward pulls out a coin from his person, if you will. Anyway, the legend goes that this, for whatever reason, inspired a kid watching to insert a coin into his, yeah. And allegedly the parents tried to sue Nickelodeon over the incident, which ended up being unsuccessful, but as far as the veracity of this story goes, it honestly just sounds too wild to be true, and I couldn't really find any solid evidence for it, so likely just another weird SpongeBob urban legend. Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse sex tape. One of the most infamous urban legends of Mickey Mouse, and even just regarding Disney as a whole, is an alleged animated sex scene between Mickey Mouse and Minnie. The story goes that Walt Disney's brother, Roy, planned a surprise party for Walt's 35th birthday in 1936, to which two animators came up with the idea for this party to make a special animation for the occasion, but upon seeing the film, Walt reportedly laughed and found the animation charming and funny and of surprisingly good quality, asking the two animators who created it to reveal themselves, and after learning who did it, allegedly fired them on the spot, and had all known copies of the animation destroyed for good. However, it's unknown if this story is even true at all, and could just be a classic Disney myth. Phineas and Ferb was based on a schizophrenic girl. So this entry relates to a story told in a DeviantArt post, which basically states that on the Spanish Wikipedia page for the show, it says that Phineas and Ferb was based on the true story of a girl born in 1993 called Candace Flynn, who also had siblings, a little brother named Phineas and a half-brother named Ferb who was unable to talk and was mentally handicapped. The mom got fed up with Candace, however, as she also suffered from some sort of mental illness, including possibly schizophrenia, and sent her off to a doctor called Doofenshmirtz, and eventually in 2007 she ended up ending her own life, leaving behind a diary which chronicled the adventures of her two brothers, which became the basis for the show. Now, I know what you're thinking. Source, this is obviously just a bad creepypasta, and, well, you're absolutely right. Just another one of those edgy cartoon conspiracy pastas, essentially, which I did a whole video about, by the way, you should check it out, but yeah. Same-sex crushes. This was a very real unaired episode of The Jenny Jones Show, a daytime talk show from the 90s. What makes this episode so notorious though? Well, it's the fact that it may have caused a murder 3 days later. The reason being is that a man named Scott Amador was featured in the episode titled Same-Sex Crushes, where it was revealed that Scott had a crush on one of his male co-workers, a man named Jonathan Schmitz, who didn't seem to be bothered by the confession. However, 3 days later, after this episode was recorded, Schmitz would murder Amador in his home in Lake Orion, Michigan, which led to the episode never being aired and becoming lost media for decades. However, this year, in January of 2023, it was discovered by Reddit user UnderclassKing that the episode was available since June of 2022 on the Court TV's website. SpongeBob SquarePants episode 5572-220. All of the episodes of the SpongeBob SquarePants cartoon have a season number and episode number, everyone knows this, but they also have another distinct number by which they can be recognized, which is called the production code. These are commonly used in the creation of television series to designate when an episode was written relative to the other episodes, meaning they aren't necessarily made in order every season, which is the case with most of the SpongeBob episodes if you look through the catalog of episodes for each season. And it seems that by looking through the production codes, fans noticed a discrepancy in Season 3 as it goes from 5572-218 titled Pranks-A-Lot to 5572-221 SpongeBob Meets the Strangler. This is peculiar because 5572-217 is the sponge who could fly, and is also 5572-219 as Patchy's lost episode. Due to there actually being a lost episode in the actual narrative of the episode, yes, it's getting a bit confusing, but the character of Patchy typically breaks the fourth wall in SpongeBob and watches the show as well, and this lost episode was a part of this real one. But what about 5572-220? Well, that one isn't accounted for, which has led people to speculate on what it could potentially be. Maybe a real lost episode, or maybe a more disturbing version of 5572-221, the Strangler episode, due to it already being quite dark in terms of SpongeBob episodes. However, it's likely just a labeling error and nothing more, although you're sure to find a few creepypasta explanations, which are always good fun. And that was it for this iceberg. We had a nice mix of cryptic lost media, non-existent hoaxes, rumors that turned out to be true, and other interesting and disturbing myths. But honestly, the most unsettling entries really turned out to be the real ones. Stuff too strange and disturbing to be made up. But let me know of any other urban legends from TV that you remember hearing as a kid, or maybe some other creepy things you saw that no one else remembers, personal TV lost media, things like that. But that's been it from me. It's been me, Source Brew. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, and peace out.